You and I with Rashmi Shetty is a human library audio podcast bringing in stories of people you and I can draw inspiration from. Welcome to the third season of this amazing story listening journey. Ordinary folks, extraordinary lives, their uniqueness and individuality, making them interesting to talk to and to listen to, each one of them completely connected to the voice in me and with motivational stories of moving beyond themselves to make a difference in the world. A reaffirmation of the fact: open your eyes wider. The world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. Our guest today is Dr. Rakesh Godhwani, the founder of the School of Meaningful Experiences that offers programs for working professionals, managers, leaders from corporations, governments, NGOs, academic institutions, and entrepreneurs on the 6 C's, namely confidence, communication, curiosity, creativity, collaboration, and competence. He's also an adjunct faculty of communication at IIM Bangalore and Ahmedabad University. Besides this, he is also taught at IIM Trichy, IIM Udaipur, IIM Vizag, IIIT Bengaluru, and Indian Institute of Science. His courses are also run at various corporates. Rakesh is a much sought after keynote speaker in various industry and education forums. He's a podcaster and has a YouTube channel too, an author of 4 books. Rakesh's fourth book, titled Public Speaking Kaleidoscope, was released by Business Expert Press USA in May 2017. His earlier book, What to Say and When to Shut Up, was published by Penguin Random House in 2014 and translated into Marathi in 2017. Rakesh launched his online course on EDX and IMBX called Effective Business Communication, designed for learners around the world. Listen in as Rakesh shares his inspirational journey and what inspired him to start the School of Meaningful Experiences. Hi, Rakesh. Such a pleasure to reconnect with you. Welcome to You and I with Rashmi Shetty. 12 years, your journey at that time was, I think, as the author of Plunge. And that's when I read about you and we met. Since that point, you've done a lot, but I'm curious to know how Rakesh began as little Rakesh to the Rakesh Godhwani that the world knows you today as.
It's absolute pleasure to reconnect with you, Rashmi, and I remember that recording really well and the chain of events that happened. It was almost like a fortuitous activity. When I wrote the book, I was thinking that how do I get on radio, and your message came. So it was almost like, when you want something, the whole universe conspires. And I've been a firm believer of that theory. And you just messaged, and it was such a nice welcome message. And it was a very funny event. I don't know if you remember. I think I came to your center in that beautiful building of All India Radio Bangalore recording office right in front of Raj Bhavan.
Yeah.
And your center head was also expecting some other person to show up for an interview. And he thought I was that person. And he kind of was like, why you come late and this and that. And I was like, man, this is a weird way to talk to a guest for the show. And then I remember there was this comedy of errors that happened, and he realized that I'm not that RJ who came the guest for Rashmi's show. But we had a great recording and it was live.
Yeah.
And immediately after that recording, 2 of my friends called that we heard you.
Yeah.
And it was such a great thing. And that's the power of communication. So I remember that day. I remember the book Plunge, which shaped up my entire journey of how today the Rakesh has come in. So as I reflected on the question and the way I thought I'll respond is one very clear thing that happened in the last 15 years. So I took a plunge in 2008. It was somewhere in the month of May, June, July. So this is the period I was going through, that transition 15 years ago. The decision had been made. I was going through the steps. And I was very clear that I will dedicate my life to this topic called communication. I did not have a very clear view how I would do it. But if I look back at today and that quarter of the year where I was like, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life to communication, I think it has been a very good journey for me, where I'm grateful that I was able to fulfill a PhD program where I went deep dive into this topic and learned a lot. And my approach has become a lot more scientific in that process. Wrote books on the topic. My third book, which is What to Say When to Shut Up, which is right behind, you can see, is doing reasonably well. And it is now in its fourth print run. And I would credit my publishers, Radhika and Millie from Penguin Random House. Also, I went and taught in good schools. One of them, IIM Bangalore, where I did my part-time MBA program from when I was working at Intel. So to get the support of my professors from that college and friends, plus various other institutions like IIM Udaipur, Ahmedabad University, Indian Institute of Science, and few other institutions, plus various corporates who now call me to help their leaders and managers into communication competence. And the final thing is, I started my own venture, School of Meaningful Experiences, completely focused on this topic. So I think I've kind of moved reasonably well on that 15-year ago Rakesh's dream. How would I rate myself and how did this all happen? A combination of great luck, plus amazing support from family and friends, including you. I mean, you got me on that radio show. So I've always felt that maybe this was universe's way of saying that, hey, you're on the right track and keep walking and keep going on that journey. And I keep looking at this as a way to move forward. It hasn't been easy, I must confess. It has been quite brutal on my family and me, because when you are paid a ton of money every month and that is gone, finding monthly paychecks is not very easy. I now have about 15 salaries to pay on the first of every month. Hasn't been very easy. But then something or the other keeps coming. Shareholders trust in you, customers trust in you, your learners send messages that because of you, my life changed. That gives us that joy. So I think I've now started to realize that my role was not just about communication and the 6 C's and School of Meaningful Experiences. I think somewhere deep inside, I'm now beginning to realize that I and you and everybody else has a purpose to come in. And I was lucky that I found that purpose and I chose to fulfill that, or at least I'm trying my best to fulfill that. And that has given me a very liberated sense of life, plus good on my family and my health, that you're able to spend time, quality time with people you love. So it has been a fantastic 15 years that I could reflect on.
Wow, Rakesh. There are many things all of us do, but the base of it all is communication. And you have delved really deep into that space. So you have become synonymous with this wonderful umbrella called communication. But looking back, what drew you into that? We do it 24/7, and many of us not even realizing how important it is. But what is
Yeah.
it about you that drew you into communication and made it your forte and the only space that you play around with?
Yeah, I think that question is the toughest one for me to try and give a picture. So I'll try my best. Um, I think if I look back at my childhood, I was not a great communicator. I had a tendency to speak very fast. It probably came from low self-esteem. Um, I was also from a family where everybody was extremely enlightened on education. I was the worst. So I had to prove harder. Plus, when you tend to speak fast, you hope that people will get impressed. So I would stammer, and and I think you then connect these dots. So I was not a great communicator, but I had the desire to go on stage and speak, which I think all of us have. So I started to connect with these basic things that all of us have a natural urge to express ourselves through words. That's what the power of humanity is all about. The second thing that happened in my childhood was that I was lucky to have been introduced to the world of movies very early. So I was, I think, 12 or 13 years of age, and I saw this life-changing movie called Anand, Rajesh Khanna, Amitabh Bachchan, which I probably have spoken ad nauseum in my classes. So here is a 12-year-old kid sitting somewhere in the west of India in a room when everybody else is playing outside, and I'm hooked onto this movie. And the movie is about this person who has 6 months to live. So what does he do in those 6 months? Does he brood and complain, or does he live life as if there is no tomorrow? And he chooses to be with people, and he communicates and he expresses. And not just Rajesh Khanna, even Amitabh Bachchan, the way the movie starts, Amitabh Bachchan is on the stage, he's getting an award because he's written a book called Anand, and he very calmly in Shuddh Hindi, and this is the beauty of dialogue writing. ये कोई उपन्यास या कोई स्टोरी नहीं है, ये तो एक एक्सपीरियंस था where Anand came in my life. And I wrote it, and that's what is the book that you're giving me an award of. And the words of that dialogue hooked me inside, and I was like, man, there is something in this communication that I have to learn. The third incident that happened was I probably got to a college from west to south, and I always talk about it very humorously that that was the first aha moment of my life, where I came out of my home protected life to a world where there is nobody to take care of you. And I met good friends and seniors who helped me say, ki boss, if you learn how to connect with people, you'll do better. And that hit me very well. That I knew that, okay, one is I memorize, write exams, get marks, which I would never connect with. But then you connect with people and move on. And I found this rewarding. So I knew that A, there is a subject called communication and human power. B, I naturally am drawn to it. Maybe I enjoy it more as compared to, let's say, computer programming or anything else. And C, there is a direct connection with this science to career. And then I started to walk towards it, came to Wipro, realized that, okay, one is you have to be a good engineer. You can't, pardon my language, bullshit your way into life. So there is a seriousness that the world looks at. That's called market reality. But then your prowess at engineering is not enough. And that's where I did much better than everybody else at Wipro. In fact, I got promoted and somebody said, you talk well, you connect well, and you are able to get things done. Not that you are a great engineer or a bad engineer. And that stuck on me. So I, for the first time, realized that, oh, somebody recognized me because not that I did this code, but I also had good relationships and I was a genuine networker. Like I invested, like how people would invest in coding, I would invest in relationships. And that started my eyes towards business communication. Then I started to meet people in that area. And I observed something very interesting that from Wipro, I went to Intel, met some great mentors. In Bangalore, there were some very interesting people who took me to a movement called the Toastmasters movement, which I was partly very intrinsically connected, but I gave up on that because I'll talk about that separately. That after a point, the movement was in a direction and I was in a direction. So I was much more in a larger communication area. And Toastmasters had a very myopic view of that, which I never connected with. And I'll talk about it because when I started School of Meaningful Experiences, that was a foundation of why it should be different than Toastmasters. And in Intel, I saw this. So I was in I was in Folsom. That was the second biggest place of Intel in US. That's where my department was. So we set up the India Center. I was the fifth or sixth person in the India Center. So young person, but very visible job. So I went to US, Folsom. I was sitting in this meeting room where Rashmi and I think it's an interesting juncture of my life. I was 23 and a half or 24, maybe 23 and a half, young, the youngest in that room. Something I don't pride today. I think the most inexperienced in that room. And by quirk of fate, I ended in that room. I didn't deserve to be there. So I saw people from all nationalities in that room. There were Americans, Europeans, Indians, Chinese, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Russians, you name it, they were there. People of all different shapes, colors, and sizes. And this was a tough problem at Intel. There was a customer issue from a very big customer. I think it was Dell or HP. Something broke in their laptop. I was in that department that was working on a chipset and the software for that laptop graphics. So we were in this room trying to solve the problem. And I saw something very interesting, which I had been observing, but that day it struck me that whenever the toughest part of the problem was being discussed, everybody looked at the Indian in the room. And that Indian is usually called the Desi, and let's call this person Srini. So whenever everybody would get stuck, they will look at Srini. Srini knew the answer. Now Srini will do mumble, 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 mumble that only Srini will understand. And all of us will be like, okay, what did he say right now? And then there was a Westerner in the room. Let's call him Greg. Greg would paraphrase exactly the same thing that Srini said, but in a lot more polished way. So what Srini is trying to say is that if we do this and then do that and revisit this in 2 days after testing, problem is gone. And the whole room will suddenly spark up in a direction, and everybody would look at Greg, and Greg is this leader. And when the promotion would happen, Greg would get promoted, not Srini. So Srini would come to me कि यार क्या करूं life में कुछ हो नहीं रहा है. And I'm like, यार man, you have to communicate, you have to do something about it. So I would start helping Srini. And that's where my journey of teaching communication began. That not that I knew everything, I would just understand the science. So this became the foundation of why I gravitated more towards communication. And communication is not just oratory, which is what Toastmasters focuses on. And nothing wrong in that. But again, it has a very, very fixed, limited view of communication. When I started studying, it's a ocean. And one life is not enough to study, research, teach, write, and practice. So I chose a path that, okay, I'm going to help working professionals and managers with their communication problems, which is you're talking to a client, you are, fighting with people. So you have to resolve the conflict, you have to be assertive. Then you have to stand up sometimes and make a presentation. You have to write something, you have to create your own path, and it goes into leadership, which is the area that I focus on, which became my PhD program. So I invested on that. And then when I decided that I'm going to full-time devote my time and finish a PhD, I also knew that if I go to a university as a tenured prof, I can teach 100, 200 at a time, maximum 300. I'll have a great website name. My photo will be there. My bio will be there. People will come to me. Maybe I can produce 10 scholars and 1,000 students. But I said I have to take it to millions of people. So that's where I decided that entrepreneurship is the only way forward, where I can create programs and scale it. And tech is a very big part of it. And that's how the whole piece started to come together. So as I look back, and again, this is what Steve Jobs said, that you can't think forward. You can only look back and connect the dots, which is what I did after you called me up and I reflected on it. That I think it was points of the life that kind of fell in place. And luck plays a good role. Track record plays an important role. Then the shareholders who invested in me, they play a good role, because at some point of time, I can't do this alone. and it requires a group of human beings to come together. And I can now tell you, Rashmi, that it's surprising that a country like India, where everybody knows that this is important, we give lip service to this program, right? I mean, even till today, every human being in India knows our education system is broken, but we still will not do anything about it. We'd love to talk about it. I have been a person who always has a different value system, that if I believe in something, I will first act on it. So if I say communication is important, I'll first teach communication. I'll set up a system on communication, then I'll talk about it. Even when I became the head of alumni of IIM Bangalore, I became the head of alumni because everybody would talk about that alumni are important, but nobody would do anything about it. So I said, okay, I'm going to become the CEO of the alumni office of IIM Bangalore. 6 years I spent there, had some amazing time. It also gave me a sneak peek into education systems, which require, I think, a humongous shift in the way they operate. And it's slow. It's not going to change so fast. So I started to see this back-end view of education thanks to all of that. Plus, when you're in a classroom, you understand education a lot differently. It's not just about lecturing. It's about giving feedback. It's about being there for your students. And that's where most communication trainers don't get it, that communication trainers end up doing communication because it makes them feel good about themselves. It's an amazing, when you get appreciated, who doesn't like it? Toastmasters have the same problem. It becomes a very self-fulfilling theory that I'm a great speaker, I get claps. And I somewhere disconnected with that my intention was that, hey, you are a great speaker, which is fine, but become a great teacher first. And that has nothing to do with oratory. It's about a very different dynamic. And then you have to walk the talk. You have to then create your own social media. And then the social media revolution helps. So YouTube, LinkedIn, and I am one of those teachers who says, first you build your YouTube channel, then talk about how to build YouTube channel. And it's not easy. And many teachers don't have that, right? That many teachers teach something, but they haven't done it themselves. And I don't connect with that. So that's the reason I decided that School of Meaningful Experiences becomes my way of creating an institution where these things are taken seriously, that you first do good communication, then you come to a classroom and teach good communication. You walk the talk, you write cases, you change lives, and people start to say, oh, wow, I can do this. It's no great shakes. And you give them a scientific program, which is not a copy paste of the Dale Carnegie book or the Toastmaster manual. So you literally sit down and write a book for Indian students because there is a different problem. And these are the important things that SOME's foundation became. So it's been 6 years now. We are somehow surviving. But we are very clear that this is how we will keep moving forward, and we'll slowly spread the whole science of communication.
Yeah. Oh, this is so interesting. You were in the right place at the right time in certain cases, but you also were very perceptive to see certain things many people did not recognize as you were growing up. Like a 12-year-old being hooked to the opening of Anand to understand communication. Maybe at that time, you did not call it communication, but something in the way it was spoken drew you into watching the film. And now, before we go further, Rakesh, since you are synonymous with it, how would you define good communication?
I think you're too kind to say I'm synonymous with it. I think, but I'll accept that with gratitude. Let's look at a good communicator. The way to understand that question then changes to who is listening to the communicator. And that's where things become very interesting. So this is where I decided to narrow it down. The first step of being a good communication researcher, or even a person who understands that, is break it into a step-by-step subject. So I'll give you a little bit of a overview of why communication has fallen down the cracks. The first big structural problem was everybody in India and Asia thinks, and thanks to the horrible colonization that happened by the Britishers, we have always confused communication to be English language. So the linguistics department becomes the, godfather of the subject, and it's not. It's a very basic human need which comes from social science, and language is a tool. So you can be Hindi, Tamil, Gujarati, Italian, French, Chinese, but then you connect with people. So I figured that out, that, oh, okay, now I know why we were not taught this subject, because the English department would think we will teach you. And that has a limited view. Only a few students who had access to that would get it. So that is one big problem. The second big problem is university systems decided to argue on it, ki chalo, let's remove them from linguistics. Now, which department owns it? And there was only one. It was humanities. So they kind of, ki chalo bhaiya jao, go to humanities, and there would be some poor professor from social science, maybe psychology. And I've seen in universities, sometimes a financial academic is teaching communication. And there are challenges there, that there is no real home in a university for communication. So it ends up in the humanities department. And humanities department has their own pecking order. The third is business schools. Business schools were the first schools that realized that, oh, this subject is very important in professional work. But then by 1980s, new subjects became more sexy, which is strategic thinking. So the professors who were earlier teaching communication suddenly were called strategic consultants. And, if you, and I've seen this in business schools, there are professors who are teaching communication, but they don't want to be called communication professors. They want to be called HROB professors. Now, could be a issue, and I don't disconnect with that. And this subject is like fine arts, that nobody wants to teach it, but everybody says it's very important. So I think then my journey began, that, okay, let's forget all of this, because this debate has no solution. It's about claiming a place in the world. And I mean, by now, that I have left that need for having a title very early in life. So I never wanted to be called a prof in the HROB or strategic department or humanities department. I just had one mission, ki boss, I need a classroom where there are people who want to learn communication. Let's focus on that. Now, why would somebody want to learn communication? And the answer is very simple. This person wants to move ahead in life. They want a job. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to get their work done. They want to be able to have a purposeful living. Now that requires collaboration, that requires thinking, and that requires getting the job done. And in that, communication plays a very important role. So then I designed the 6 C's framework, that, hey, it's not just about communication, it's also about confidence, which is heavily lacking in our Indian system, thanks to education, comparisons, caste structures, and the history of our country, right? So confidence is the biggest problem. I think if there is one thing I've done well in my classes, is I've tried to, I don't know, but I've tried to lift the confidence of my learner. And that's a science in itself. So we really focus on that. Then I give them a scientific framework on communication, which is there in my book. And I'll write hopefully many more books before I pop. And that's the only way I can produce more researchers and teachers. The third is the curiosity, creativity is very low in our working professionals. They're smart people, but because they have just memorized all their life and they follow this copy paste method, their curiosity, creativity is very, very low. So in my classes, that's why I bring movies in the discussion, because it suddenly creates a whole vista for the learner. So maybe that causes a very good connection with the learners. The fifth is that I help my learners realize that you can't live isolated life. You have to connect with people. That's collaboration. So in my classes, I help them realize that your ability is only so good. It's also about connecting with people, so they get it. And the last is it connects with their success. So this 6 C's framework is probably my contribution, which is why you say that I have become what I am. I still have miles to go on that, but I now see the reason why my work is getting more results than everybody else, that I've taken a systems approach to this problem rather than one narrow area. And because I've taken a systems approach, I will take more time to reach a certain place. And my mission is to very simple, create a large platform for people to come and not just learn, but also teach others. Because I want to produce jobs in communication. There are people who write to me that, hey, I want to be a good teacher of communication. The problem is there's no place to make that happen because a university has its own challenges. A college has its own issues. A school system has its own issues. So I said, okay, I'm going to create a new private system where at least we can learn together and then we'll find a classroom for you. And this thinking combined with sheer luck. So let me tell you, my popularity is not because I'm a great person. I got lucky with one video, which is the video at IIM Bangalore Vista. Students invited me. And my students have always been very kind to me. I think it's like fish and water, right? I need my students to survive. So they invited me in 2017 or 18 to give a talk. And that was not the first day I've done that talk. I think it was my sixth lecture on the same topic. But that recording went viral. And why did it go viral? Not that, again, it was a great recording, but maybe it connected with a certain audience which was hungry to find that answer. The YouTube explosion and the bandwidth explosion fueled it. I mean, there was hardly any videos in that genre. So I got lucky. Plus, I am Bangalore. I mean, the institution plays a very big role. In fact, one of my professors had a very nice way of humbling all of us. Okay, don't think you're any great shakes. If I take a gadha and put in this classroom, that guy will also get a great job. And that's how we were trained. Ki, haan, bhai, and there is an institution that adds value to you and don't get ahead of yourself. So I would attribute these factors to that video, which gave me a great popularity that helps me in my work. The best part of my success is a feeling that I'm walking somewhere and somebody stops me. That happened just yesterday morning. I was just walking. I was dropping my daughter to a place. I was walking back and somebody just runs and stops me. Sir, I have seen you. And I just take a few seconds to express my gratitude and the fact that, this video changed their life. And they tell me that I watch that video every day because it makes me feel good. And that keeps me going, that somebody is watching, somebody is learning from you. It's a, responsibility. You have to take it very seriously. And it comes with its own fame and it can mess up with your head, which is what I keep asking, that I hope it doesn't mess up with my head. And I hope it doesn't make me feel that, oh, मैंने किया है, मैंने कुछ नहीं किया. I think it's a combination of so many things, plus people who sacrificed for me, plus my own good fortune to be at the right place at the right time. And it kind of clicked. And that has given me that path that, okay, keep walking on that path because there are more. If you create 100 teachers like you, I hope there will be a million good communicators. A million good communicators with good confidence will only do good for our society. They will lift the productivity. They'll solve fights. They'll calm everyone down. They'll inspire people. I think that's what we need in today's century that we are going through.
When you were describing this entire journey, Rakesh, especially with you, you spoke about how your 6C framework helped a lot of people, how you arrived at it, and then the YouTube video that went viral. And maybe that's why you're synonymous with communication. What makes you stand out is you delve deeper into something that we do every day. Is there something that you personally, when you meet people, listen to people, that you look for to rate them as good, average, or lots to improve?
Yeah, it has taken me many years to at least begin to understand it. So there's still plenty of room to learn. But I can now look at the potential of a communicator by 3 or 4 critical points, which we teach in all our programs at School of Meaningful Experiences. The first is brevity. I value this a lot. Something that I've not mastered. And you can see that I ramble, I go on, and my answers are long, so I'm still practicing. But you'll see this in good communicators. They tend to speak less. The words are measured. And you will find such people with 2 more qualities, that these people are also good writers. So I always tell all communicators, and unfortunately, the Instagram generation doesn't realize it, that, your ability to gab in front of the camera is not communication. It's your ability to also get that idea into a paragraph. And that paragraph should be so clear that the audience gets it. So brevity is my first thing. I look at videos where I see the speaker and the kind of sentences they see. If it is brief, I know they're good communicators. The second is, we call it engagement. That what is engagement? The listener should be drawn towards the speaker. And this is very critical, because this is where the ideas go deeper into the thought processes. That's what I also teach in my classes, that your audiences at some point of time will see your engagement levels from the knowledge that you bring in. So go deeper and deeper, research more, find better stories, connect with your listeners so that they're like asking questions. And there is, again, I draw a lot of inspiration from movies. I always give this example of a movie which was the second movie of Nolan, where he shot to fame. The first was Memento, which did reasonably well, but it had its own cult. But the second movie, Prestige, is where he kind of hit off. And it was about the story of two magicians who fought with each other in the old parlor trick days of the yore, because in that time entertainment was very limited. So these two characters were played by Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. And towards the end of the movie, where one of them dies, the question that the other one, both of them connect this passion for magic. And the question is that, why do you do magic when it is, just a parlor trick? And Hugh Jackman actually gives the answer that it is not the fame or the money that I enjoy magic with, but when I'm making that trick, when I'm on the stage and I can see my audience and their eyes are widening, that drives me crazy. So to make that happen, I do magic. I think that's the kind of thinking good communicators have, that they have a way to engage their audiences and they enjoy it. And I've reached that level in my life, that, okay, I do it because it is such a magical moment. And you know that if you get that right, things will fall in place. So that is the second thing, very engaging. And that comes from depth of knowledge, which most of the communicators that are aspiring to don't get it. So they think that if I make a video which is highly, fun music and some actions and some tricks that work on TikTok, I'll suddenly get a lot of likes. It doesn't work that way. You really need to get into the mind of the audience, and the audience is not stupid. They know that beyond the point, there's nothing that comes out of it. So engagement levels. Third is relevance. The audience has expectation. How close can you communicate on that? That's the relevance. And I think I see a big gap between the speakers and the audiences. Visibly, like I'm sitting in this room and I can look at my audience. It's almost like I can see on their faces, I need an answer to that question. And this person speaking has no clue what the question is. The difference is so big. I can see it in team meetings. I can see it in classrooms. So the relevance is very, very big. And that's the third thing. And the last one is nothing but just clarity, that after speaking, did the person feel, oh yeah, this is clear, I get it? Or did the audience get confused that what did he speak? I didn't get it. So we then connect these things. But now I can look at very simple communication styles in people. And if these four parameters work for me, I then put that mark, that good communicator. Now, from that, there is a path, that how do you become a better and a great communicator? And it takes a lifetime to probably become a great communicator. Very few people have cracked that. Good communicators you can become with training programs. Better requires practice, feedback. Great communicator, I would say, then you become a master of the craft. And that I would probably call few people. Like if you look at politics, leadership, you then get these answers. So I've studied books on great communicators. My personal favorite is someone like Barack Obama. So he's a master. and there's lots written on him. A name in India would be Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Again, master communicator. It takes a lifetime to get there. And you also need the right teachers. So Obama's teacher was different. Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji is different. And it's not that they were assigned a teacher. They learned from people around them. There were great leaders around them in their systems. They took it. In academia, you're able to see great communicators. I follow a few of them. TED Talks, amazing ways to find master communicators and find okay communicators. Business studies. Now there's plenty of videos on YouTube where you can see a business leader speaking, entrepreneurs, and that's how you do it. That's the way I would like to work on.
One question at this point, when did you realize that this is the moment that communication is my forte, my purpose, and I'm going to go ahead? Was there any coin drop moment when you realized that that's where you're going? Because you're a qualified engineer, you could have gone in that direction. But what was that moment that told you that, okay, communication is where I'm supposed to be, and that's my purpose?
No, so I must disappoint you. It was not a coin drop moment, but a series of points. So if I would make friends, I would make friends who were good communicators. So that was the first shift in my thought process.
Okay.
And I was lucky that I always made friends who were like twice my age. So I was drawn to wisdom and drawn to people who could communicate better. Maybe that could have been the coin drop, or at least the pattern. The second thing is my parentage. I mean, I come from a family of teachers. So there is some hereditary gene that I realized very later on. And that probably happened when I started to be invited to give talks to young students. Because when you're working with Wipro, Intel, Qualcomm, and you're doing very well in life, you get invited to schools and colleges because they want to inspire the students to take up engineering science. I didn't know that I was being invited because I'm from these companies, not that I'm a great communicator. So I would go to these rooms, and that classroom experience was that scene from Prestige that I started to see 20 of them switched off. The backbenchers completely dozing, but this 5 people in front of me, their eyes becoming bigger and bigger. So I did hundreds of such lectures. And this is that whole 10,000 hour rule. There probably can never be a coin drop moment on what is your purpose. It's always a journey. And the steps are that you do something. If it excites you, you do more and you keep doing it. And one day you're like, oh, wow, this is great. And not just I enjoy doing it, but also I'm good at it. So both the points coincide. So I think by the year 2002, I was very clear that I enjoy this space a lot more. By 2003, I started looking out for opportunities to teach. So I started teaching on weekends from 1999. Before that was just random. But 1999, I started to really invest time. 2003, I started looking out for opportunities. I think I taught my first full-time program as a professor or a teacher. The word professor is a designation, was in 2004. And then 2005 and 6 more opportunities. Then I had 2 jobs. And then very clearly I had to decide that, okay, I'm very good at this job as well and this as well. Which one do I pick? Otherwise, I'll probably not be able to do justice to both. And that clarity came in 2006. Very clear. I can tell you that scene 2006 or 7. I think I had just traveled. I used to live out of a suitcase because when you're part of a multinational in a very senior position, fast track leadership life, it's a very fast life. So I used to live out of a suitcase. And this was the dream in the classroom, right? When you're a student, you want to live out of a suitcase, get a business class and this and that. So that happened very quickly. So I was living business class life out of a suitcase, but I was totally exhausted one week. And my family was in Bangalore. I was in Bombay. And I was combination of tired, homesick, lost, confused, reflective. What do I do with my life? And I called up my office and told my colleagues that I'm not coming. So my executive secretary assigned to me thought that I'm burnt out for a week. So let me just cancel all appointments and kal tak aa jayega office. So I'm in Bombay. I come to Bandstand. That's where I used to live. I could afford. And I had a chai shop and I called that person ki aaj chai leke aa because I'm in a philosophical mode. And that's the coin drop moment where I decided. So very clear, I was sitting, it was a warm Bombay day. I was looking at the Arabian Sea. This is that bandstand area. Shah Rukh Khan's house is at the back, and Taj West Land's End is on the left, and this beautiful joggers park, and a simple shanty serving sweet chai for 2 rupees, 3 rupees. So I just sat down and I reflected on my life that, hey, what do I want to do? And I wrote like a piece of paper and did a little bit of analysis that on the y-axis I said how much I'm earning, and on x-axis I wrote down Monday to Sunday. Monday to Friday I'm earning a lot. Saturday, Sunday I'm not earning anything. But then Monday to Friday I'm also not very happy with the kind of job I'm doing. But on Saturday, Sunday, I'm teaching and I'm super happy. And that's the pin drop moment that I looked at this graph and I'm like, hey, I'm in the wrong industry. I think I'm spending all my life in an industry that pays me very well, but I'm not able to utilize the maximum potential and the joy I'm supposed to get. It's not joy, it's a combination of flow and other concepts. But on Saturday, Sunday, when I teach, I don't earn anything or maybe very little, but I'm super duper productive. So the question then became that, hey, I'm supposed to be here, which is education. Communication is the subject. Because of so much of practice, I know I can do very well. Now I just have to find a way to pay my bills. That was the plunge. And that started that whole journey. Of course, I got lucky, and it was a combination of stupidity. I could have failed miserably. I still can. I mean, anything can happen in entrepreneurship. But if I look back, that coin drop moment was not the communication part, but the coin drop moment was I am in the wrong industry. But before that was a 10,000 hour rule of making sure that you enjoy communication, teach it. It's not just infatuation and a fling. You're very clear that this is what you will do. And deep inside, all of us have these thoughts. There is something we are very good at. We know it. The choice then becomes, do you want to pursue it or do you, yeah, 55 के बाद करेंगे, which is what most parents say कि guitar बाद में बजाना. That's how they teach.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I'm going to play guitar right now and then figure out everything else.
Yeah, and that's where the meaningful name, School of Meaningful Experiences, comes into play. How was this born, and what made you plunge into that space of starting a school and have such a beautiful name, a long name, and still, like, was it literally what you went through that translated into the title of your school, or the entrepreneurial journey that you got on? And tell us about that journey.
Yeah, no, that was a coin drop moment. So I knew I will start a company. This debate was very clear by 2017. So I finished my PhD. By that time I was anyway teaching in IIM Bangalore, IIM Udaipur, Ahmedabad University, and then you have IIM Trichy, IIM Visakhapatnam, SDM, Mysore, and my friends are everywhere, so they would call. By that time, everybody knew that I've done a PhD, so I now am a lot more connected with this topic from a research perspective. So my chances of getting into a classroom as an adjunct professor was very, very good. The question then becomes is that, do I stand a tenured professorship? The answer is no, because I think I was 35, 36, no, I was 40 by that time. For a college to hire a 40-year-old in a professorship is not very easy because they look at publishing papers as a milestone, which is what is a very sad dynamic these days. But ठीक है, I mean, छोड़ दो उसको. There's nothing we can do about ranking systems in this world. Everybody agrees it's a nonsensical system, but everybody plays a part to make it better. So I didn't want to publish papers that nobody reads. I was happy in my own world. So I decided, boss, this tenureship and all, I'm not going to do it. do I then become a consultant or whatever, which I anyway was. I was a one-man army. But then I was very clear that I'm going to create jobs and build an institution. So that clarity came. The how do I name it was a journey of about 1.5 years. And I remember this was somewhere in 2018. I think I was taking a nap, and so I knew that whatever I name, it has to be a school. Somehow that is very clear in my mind. The question then became a school of what? I mean, school of communication, school of speaking, school of 6 C's. So by that time, 6 C's was also very clear. And I was like just thinking and resting, and I had lots of notes. So I would read them, and I was sleeping. And I think I was in my sleep where my consciousness was very alive. And I had written plunge. I talk about it. I understand the word, purpose, experiences. I always felt that the biggest problem in education is that the experience for the learner is disgusting. So the word experiences flashed. Oh, school of experiences. Okay, now we have got something. And somewhere I was like, okay, what is an experience? It doesn't make any sense. And then suddenly, I think somebody would have said it to me, or my son would have said it here. This is a meaningless experience. And that's when the light bulb struck that, oh, yeah, all of us know that education is such a meaningless experience. We all come out of it disgusted. Ki boss, I'll never enter a classroom again. And I said, that's the problem I'll solve. That how do I take these completely disillusioned learners who are coming out of the education system, who have had a meaningless experience, to become better professionals and managers and human beings with a meaningful experience. So then it kind of SOME kind of happened. I woke up, ran out. My wife was having chai. It was, I think, 4:30 in the afternoon. I said, and my son was there. This was a time where all of us were together. And I said, School of Meaningful Experiences. And they all looked up and said, nice. It has a zing to it. And that's the closure. And then somebody said, SOME. That sounds even more nice. So if you ask a learner, who are you? You are a somebody. I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. But then, suddenly everything, and this is the whole universe, Kung Fu Panda, Oogway, universe will tell you what to do. So, and I just loved it. And I immediately went ahead with the registration, and that's where it is. So School of Meaningful Experiences caters to a working professional who is working in a good company or any company and has the desire to learn to communicate and move up. So anybody above 22 years all the way to 55. And the way we work is we put all the content into programs, very well defined. We have typed everything, recorded everything. So I'm the master trainer, but we also have trainers and guides. We call them guides. Okay. And the reason is that, it is such a difficult subject that you can't say I'm teaching you. I think the only thing you can say is we are guiding each other to figure out what to do. Yeah. And so we have guides. In fact, we look for good guides and trainers. If you know anyone, we are going to start our third batch of guides who will train. Then we deploy them in the client place with a lot of training, a lot of effort. I also go as a guide, and but very soon my nirvana is people should come to SOME for our content and our guides, not just me. Right now, it is heavily dependent on me, and I'm trying to create great teachers and guides who are people who understand the subject and can help and guide and teach, and that will create employment also. So that's our focus, and we work with B2B clients, corporates, and colleges and universities. So education and that. We also have programs for children and schools and colleges, but we don't advertise it too much. If they come to us, we reactively give it to them.
And when you talk about this, you're saying 2018, 2019, and then 2020, the pandemic hit. So Did you plan it as something which will be virtual much before virtual classes became a reality? How did you intend moving forward, and how did you go through the pandemic?
See, I have been a very big believer of online education. I'll tell you two very critical perspectives. हमारे सभ्यता में ऐसा नहीं था कि you have to always go to a gurukul. We have a story in Mahabharata where there was a learner who did not access the gurukul, but he saw the teacher, Eklavya. Dronacharya was the guru to both. And I connect with that story so much कि that was there in Three Idiots also, right? कि पढ़ने के लिए यूनिफॉर्म लगती है. What a brilliant dialogue. So I always look at that. कि there are some students who cannot come to a classroom. So how do I take a classroom to them? And technologies, and I'm a techie by heart. I'm not a, let's say, a good engineer, but I connect with science and technology a lot more. I, in fact, do a lot of science storytelling and work a lot with scientists. And we recently worked with ISRO, and we will do more work with ISC and scientists. So I'm a science geek. And I know that without technology, things will not scale. So in Intel Qualcomm, 20 years ago, we envisioned a classroom which was online. And it happened. IGNOU, the Indira Gandhi National University, has been running for 4-5 decades now. There are thousands of people who've got good education and they're doing very well in life. They may not be published in Economic Times and they may not be on LinkedIn that we cherish in various work, but they are doing extremely well. And this has been there for donkey's years. So I have been, and I'm a part-time, so I did a program called PGSM, now PGPEM. I'm a very proud alumnus of that program. I did not want to write CAT. इतना दिमाग नहीं है मेरे पास. Second is I did not want to go to a bank or a consulting company. I found this education on the weekends and I loved it and I maximized it. And I know the power of online work because in Intel Qualcomm, we were working from any place where there's a phone. This is the reality of the world. But the educational institutes don't want to let go of their power. But I'm glad the last 10 years are humbling all of us that, if you want something to happen, there are ways to make it happen. Of course, there will be a slight sacrifice. You cannot compare apple to apple. Everybody is fixated on the question, is online education as good as classroom education? The answer is no, it can never be. It's like apples versus oranges. But there are learners who don't care about coming to a classroom. So I've been a firm believer of online education. So when I started SOME, I knew online is the framework. Pandemic just made it easier for us to grow. We got lucky also. Though today I must tell you that finding online learners is getting difficult because they are frustrated with online and it's getting meaningless, boring. So I know that is also a fashionable thing. But if you look at various institutions, their online programs are thriving. There are companies which are thriving. Now we've had bad eggs like Baiju and many more, which I will not name because I have friends working there and investors there. When I sit with them, वो सब बोलते हैं कि सर गलती हो गई, but somewhere थोड़ा बहुत वो we have to play the role of everything is fine. So we know that there are some greedy human beings, Baiju being one of them and White Hat Junior being the second big culprit. And I'm using these words very carefully without uh, mincing my words, that they have done great disservice to this entire thought process. Now, who's to be blamed? I don't know. I don't think one person to be blamed. It's like everybody is at fault. But these two companies have done tremendous damage and I got impacted, and many more good entrepreneurs who feel online is the way to go. So I feel that if you look at the data points, recently IIM Bangalore launched a BBA program, which is a tech-led program. There will be many more experiments. Then there are companies which are focused, and the world's #1 university now has a fully online program, which is now in the good names. So there are all institutions which are going for tech-led programs. Why are they doing it? There are some learners who will pay money to come to a classroom. That will not change. But there is a huge market who are ready to do online because they want to work. They have their other priorities. They are not trying to prove that I'm a gold medalist. They want access to good content and good teachers and meet other people online and live their life. And that space is growing massively. In fact, that's what the AI revolution is all about. That in a given day, I can learn from two universities. Who stops me? This BBA program, the student can do BBA and also do stock market trading. कौन रोकेगा उसको? And to me, that is exciting that at least there are experiments. I feel the next 5 years will be a tumultuous years for humanity. We don't know the right answer. But tech-led education is not going away. That is written on the wall. All institutions will adopt it. The day where we will be sitting in a room but connected with the world using some technology is arrived. It's been there for the last 10 years. It will just become better. And 20 years ago, none of us even thought that we will rent our rooms on Airbnb. We will do ride share. The world changes very fast. So it used to take 10, 20 years earlier. Now it will take 3 to 4 years for people to quickly change. So I feel that everybody will get warmed up to tech-led education. There will be better vistas. This whole journey of finishing education at 21 will stretch. People will now do part-time education, work, then full-time, then work, then part-time. So it will stretch to 30, 35 years. And then people will also not work for, not study for 10 years, rejoin at 40, 45. And already there are a lot of experiments at this second inning, third inning, and fourth inning that I believe in. So I feel it's a combination of various answers, but you asked me a pinpointed question. Pandemic helped us, but that was a it was not a great experiment. We got lucky. Post pandemic, we have also set up places where people come to us. We go to meet them. So it's a blended learning. There is no one in the world who can tell you that, is this the right model? Because the model is evolving. So people like me are adjusting to everything. And we call it blended learning.
Yeah, and I think that's what meaningful experiences are all about. Blending, learning, moving ahead. And just, you said you thrived in the pandemic, but then when it came to life itself for a lot of people, there were a lot of personal reflections when it came to the pandemic. So what were yours, Rakesh, if any, that the pandemic taught you?
Sure. I felt I was very privileged in the pandemic. We were in a very protected environment. Everything came to us. So I feel, again, that's a purpose, right? That you have a larger job to do and you have to be very conscious of that. So when I saw people not realizing how lucky we were in those days, especially people living in top cities and in neighborhoods, which is privileged neighborhoods, and fighting on issues that we should not let people from outside come in because we are at risk, was a turning point in my thought process, that I thought very differently. Instead of fighting with people, I would say, oh, I think I'm having this privilege because I have a larger purpose when it's over. So that strengthened my belief in the work I was doing. So pandemic gave me that clarity. It was very clear that, hey, the world is going through a bad time, but I think I have a larger purpose which I will wait for, and I will make that happen. Second thing was extreme sense of joy with the family, and we are all together. So we really enjoyed Netflixes and Amazons, and my knowledge systems increased. So I read a lot. I walked a lot. I spent a lot of time with my family. We were lucky to be together. Our little third daughter came, so we had a toy to play with. And so I think that taught me the value. And I had left a very successful life to be with my family. So that happened. And the third thing is how, at least I really find this in humanity amazing, that uh, we may argue with each other, we may fight with each other, but when something, a larger enemy comes, we become one. So I saw that people became one and we fought that. And to me, that is the ultimate path, that when you discuss that the world is going to hell, I say no. I mean, it's not true. I think we humanity have a very brilliant way of coming together and uh, fighting the evil, which was there in that movie Batman also, right? That Joker would say ki the human beings are not good enough, but he does a social experiment. So my belief in those things, that there is something called good. You can choose to be with good. You can choose to be with bad. The pandemic taught me that, hey, stay focused on your good values. There is a time which will heal things. Stay humble to the fact that you are safe and you can do something. Be grateful for family and health. And I really did that. And in that process, see if you can help someone. That is very critical. So I'm part of a NGO where in Bangalore, in Jayanagar, it's called Vishwas. We offer lay counseling to anyone who wants it, completely free, confidential. So I volunteer on one day, and the day the first lockdown eased, that certain services could be given and Vishwas was ready to operate, I and few others were the first ones who went. We would sit there, people would come. And that was a time I realized the power of giving back, the power of really being there for someone. And that connected with my own thought processes, that, a promotion or some financial thing will give you some joy. Teaching gives me more joy, but then helping someone gives me the joy that I can never describe. So it kind of falls in place to your role of a meaningful experience, a teacher. I also must confess, Rashmi ji, that I'm now an extremely boring person in social parties, because this is how I speak. And in social parties, nobody's going to listen to this kind of a lecture, especially when you have a glass in front of you. So I have not been invited to lots of parties, which is great. And I to connect with people who are like me now, and we find our spaces. Thankfully, my family is exactly like this, so we have our own little space, and we're very happy with that.
I think at the end of the day, that's all matters. So you're doing it right for sure. And any highlights, Rakesh, in this journey that you've taken and you've taken us through, any highlights that stay with you, moments that make you smile, that, yes, I'm on the right path?
Yeah, no, every day, Rashmi, I wake up, um, and the only question I ask is, do I feel excited that I have a class? And the answer is surprisingly yes. So the only thing I can share with all of you through your podcast is that if there is this excitement in you which is alive, you're on the right track. That's the only way I have realized. I mean, trust me, my entrepreneurship journey, and I can tell you, India is going through, not just India, US and Europe and everywhere, entrepreneurship is going through a phase where majority of it is lies, and we know it.
Yeah.
It's very sad, but it is happening. It's a bubble, it'll burst. I hope it kind of settles down. But I can see children and youngsters through Shark Tank being lured into becoming an entrepreneur. 2 years unicorn, and now I'm going to buy a Porsche and live a life and all of that. It doesn't happen. So I know so many people who want to become entrepreneurs, do something. There is no pot of gold. And this pot of gold is very rare. Very few people have it. And they are the ones who come on LinkedIn and everybody loves them, but doesn't mean everybody will get it.
Yeah.
So when you are an entrepreneur struggling, the only way you can move forward is, does it excite you? And to me, one, it excites me. Second, my colleagues are as excited, despite that there are times you're like horrendously depressed. You work so hard and somebody says, I didn't like it. So yeah, there have been bad moments. And then my shareholders who say, you have taken up a topic which all of us knew is important, but none of us had the guts to do it. You have the guts to do it, we'll support you.
Mhm.
So these are the three things I probably have told myself. And the last is also, I think I've reached a point where I really have to prove nothing to anyone. I don't have to put on LinkedIn that I got acquired or I'm a billionaire. I have no qualms in even saying that maybe one day we'll have to close it. It's all right. Dekhi jayegi. But in that journey, you learn something, figure out a better way, tell yourself that you tried your best. What more can you do? Beyond a point, you just have to connect to Gita, ki karam karte raho, and everything else falls in place. So you connect to a larger purpose of life.
Yeah, yeah, that is really true. And in the process of sharing all of this, you've given us some beautiful nuggets on how to handle life and the challenges in life. But do you have 3 life lessons that I can ask you at this point that you'd
Yeah.
leave us with?
So it changes, but since we are talking today, I'll give you a context of today because I want your podcast to also be a way that somebody listens and it can change the way they think. The first important life lesson that I have learned is uh, don't overplan, because the pandemic has taught one lesson that nothing is constant. I also think that the recent election results are also a very good data point that just because everybody thinks in a certain way, it's not the truth. So, and I'm not saying that I'm against something or I'm pro something. I think what has happened on 4th June is exactly that. Don't overplan. I think there is a way of the world. Connect with the way of the world. And over planning is nothing but your arrogance that you have. You think that you're in control of something. You have no control on anything. That is a very big lesson for today's VUCA generation of 2024. The second is be willing to deal with ambiguity a lot more. Things are shifting so much. There's nothing called truth anymore. It's all relative. Social media is making it worse. AI will make it worse. So I think this is the time to really ask some very fundamental questions, and tell yourself that one life is not enough to learn. So keep learning. So I think the only way you can deal with ambiguity is keep learning and upskill yourself. Every couple of years, take up something which is very different. Get your brains fired up. That's the only way you can survive the ambiguity. And number 3 is please tell yourself that you've come on this planet for a reason. And you have, and I did this TED talk that I look at life as a giant waiting room. So we come and we go. These 2 points are certain. In between is a waiting room. Ask yourself, how do you want to spend time in this waiting room? What is it that you're investing your currency of time? Is it on nonsensical things to tell others who you are? Or is it about doing something that you're meant to do and then decide your life accordingly? And if you can get that clarity, I think that's the 3 messages I have for your listeners.
Beautiful, Rakesh. And like always, a pleasure talking to you. An honor having you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. What I would love to take away from this conversation is that it is very important more than anything else to connect to yourself, because I think that communication with the self is where the first steps toward finding who you are comes into play. So thank you for taking us through your amazing journey. Stay blessed, continue inspiring.
Thank you very much.
With that, we complete this episode of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know inspirational people whose story needs to be heard. You can write in at rashmi.thirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thirdeye@gmail.com.